companies that do really well in this space are the companies that recognize right away, we're not functioning as a team here. What do we do? And they do the hard work.
Today I talked to Dr. Russ Ouellette, who has been running Sojourn Partners, an executive coaching and leadership firm. Today we talk about building a culture of leadership within your organization.
You know, it's always amazing to me that I can sit in a room with really rational, very bright people, and they go, oh yeah, why don't we trust each other? Like, you just have to be aware of it. Companies that invest in that kind of stuff can do well.
He has his doctorate in leadership. He's coached and trained over 10,000 people.
They don't know how to shift from being a great contributor on a team to actually leading people, because she had mentoring, she had people that believed in her, they put her in situations that were difficult. That's how you teach leadership. You actually show people, look, that wasn't so hard.
We also look at how you work with and lead really smart people.
What we're doing as leaders is creating that sense of agency in people so that they can be accountable.
All right, let's get going. So Russ, thanks for hopping on. You are a number of things. One of them's a leadership coach. How did you decide that was the thing you wanted to do?
You know, nobody ever asked me that question. So interesting. I was a marketing undergrad. I found myself working in finance at Raytheon Company, and I sucked at finance. I was just not good at it. I kept getting promoted though, but I wasn't getting promoted because of my vast spreadsheet mathematical, finance skills. I kept getting promoted because I would be put on a team, and I guess because of my lack of skills, I had to figure out other ways to do it. And I figured out by, motivating people, getting people to influence other people to do stuff. I guess I was leading. And I found myself kept getting promoted. And then I went to a conference and I spoke with this person was a coach, and she started talking to me about organizational development. And anyways, I actually gave a talk last week. Gary Hirschberger, I don't know if you know him, Stonyfield Yogurt, right? He was a speaker, and I got a chance to introduce him a little bit. And I told this story. I was working in finance at Raytheon, and I was just overwhelmed. I was working too hard. I just had a baby. And I was thinking, I have marketing background. Let me go look at what marketing things I could do. And I called a few firms and I called companies like yours. And they basically said, if you can't bring clients, we're not interested, basically is what they told me, like in a 2-minute phone call. But there was an ad in the paper for this yogurt company. And, and I'm thinking, well, they're looking for a marketing person. Let me call. So I call the company, and this guy answers the phone. He identifies himself as the owner, and he spends like a half hour with me on the phone. So Russ, why do you want to get into marketing? And what do you want to do? So we had this great conversation, and I realized in that conversation that I really didn't want to go back into marketing. I really wanted to get further into this organizational development stuff that I was kind of pursuing. And but there's a couple lessons there. One is you should take every call, no matter who calls, and you should. And him spending the time like that really had an impact on me. But it's part of his character as a leader as well, right? So, I kind of went off in that direction. I was a high potential at Raytheon, so they gave me a choice. We started hiring these branded executives, and because I was a high potential for the company. Even though I had no finance background, they said, we have 3 jobs, Russ. You can run finance for IT, which is 4,000 people. You can run finance for that. You can do enterprise negotiations. And I had some negotiation skills, or you can run OD. And I said, what's OD? And the executive, who was a branded person, reported directly to the president, went to the whiteboard and started drawing up culture and motivation, and started doing. And all of a sudden, you saw this guy light up. He just lit up, and I'm listening to him. And I'm thinking, well, doesn't the company do this now? And he's like, no, they don't. And he said, if you want the job, you can have it. Like, it was that easy. And I said, what the heck? I might as well try. And I went and did that, and I just fell in love with it. And what happened was, as I was running organizational development for 4,000 people, not having any experience at it, the best part of my job was when an executive had to give a presentation to the president, comes into my office, and I'm just like a director. I'm a first level director. I'm not even I'm not a senior vice president or vice president. These guys come in my office and they say, we have a meeting with the president and I'm nervous about it. And I would just ask him questions. Well, what are you nervous about? And I just started doing this naturally and I loved it. And then I went and looked at it and it was like, it wasn't really a great career path especially for a man on the East Coast. It was really big out West. It was big in Europe. It wasn't necessarily a big thing here. And I just, I wanted to see my kids. I wanted to control my own destiny. So I went and got certified. And then, after that, it took off from there. But hopefully that's not too long of a story.
No, I think that was great. You actually made some interesting points there. I'll try to catch up on all of them, but I don't want to say that it sounds like a job that anyone could do. But you didn't have any formal training to begin with. They maybe recognized a natural affinity or ability or talent in you.
Maybe, but this is what I really think happened. The company was going through, it was almost like it was a big giant company, a Fortune 100 company, growing like crazy. And the internet just became a big thing. And they were staffing up IT to kind of do all that work. And they were just looking for warm, hungry bodies. And most people didn't know, it was kind of a new thing. And I was willing to do it. And I think it was almost like I kind of fell into it. I mean, I knew I had trust in myself that I had these abilities. I knew I was excited about working in organizational development. I was excited about managing culture. And so it was like, I think it was really kind of circumstance, to be honest with you. It wasn't like I didn't design to kind of do this. It kind of just unfolded as I went. And I just kept following what I was passionate about. I kept following what my instincts were telling me that, boy, I'm helping people. I'm really having an impact. And so with that kind of hunger, I kept going to more conferences. I got certified in coaching. I eventually ended up working on my doctorate. I mean, I kind of, I look back now, thousands of clients over the last bunch of years, probably tens of thousands of conversations with people. Looking back, and I'm not really doing much different now than what I was doing then, except I have a few more stories to tell and a few more experiences.
Yeah, I was going to ask what if there was in getting your PhD, if there was was there like an aha moment or did it have a material impact maybe on the way you look at this?
Yeah, I had a aha moment while I was going through that. We had to go to these residencies where we would, all fly into, and there's like 100 people fly into this place and we spend a week there entrenched in learning these skills. And I was put on one of our first, we had to write a lot of papers. We had to give a lot of presentations. We had to do a lot of research. We had to go back to our room and research and then come back. And I was put on a team and, this is so funny. There's this Asian gentleman that works in the oil industry. There's a Korean woman that's in the military. There's a school teacher from Ohio. Like there's all these different people. And apparently I wasn't doing that great on the team. So this guy, Jurong, his name was Jurong. He was a Chinese, executive, an oil executive. He meets me in the hall. And he goes, Mr. Ouellette, we have a problem. I'm like, what's the matter? Karen has said she refuses to work with you. And I immediately said to myself, oh my God, like, we're human beings. We fall into these traps and we kind of get in these situations. And it was like, even though I'm like thinking about this all the time, I think I'm an expert at it, working in a team, working on projects, even though I'm so master at this, I'm screwing it up. So I went up to Karen's room and I basically said, listen, I really apologize. Can I start again? And she's like, yes. And everything, I calmed down and I think it's like the need to get an A on the paper, the need to be really good, the drive to do our best. You'll fall, human beings are going to fall into these traps. And this goes to the subject you want to talk about, which is scientific, professionals, right? You have at these offsites, there were hundreds of really bright people, really, passionate about what they're doing. And we couldn't get out of our own way to work in teams on make believe projects, never mind what's going to happen in the real world. So that was an aha for me. Like, wow, this is really impactful stuff. Like, we can really make a difference. So, and we also had great models. My advisor for my dissertation was a guy from Australia, and he was just like I want to be him when I grow up, like kind of thing, right? And I actually find myself modeling myself sometimes when I'm doing facilitated events and live rooms with people. And so it's like once you hitch you hitch to that wagon and you care that much about it, and you work with a bunch of people that really care just as much as you about it. It was just addicting to me. So that's I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of,
Yeah,
that was, even now when I talk about it, I get excited about it.
that was great. That's a great story. And certainly I think the point is well taken. If you're in training for your doctorate for this, and even in the middle of it, you struggled and you had the frameworks and you had the training and you had the team. Everybody's trying to row together and just bumping into that. And I think that leads well into when, a lot of the companies that I work with are in startup or early stage, and they're trying to build these dynamic teams. And, at some level, everybody's excited, but there's a lot of focus on the technology or the science. And they struggle a little bit, I think, sometimes with building those teams from a human perspective, from an working together and engaging. I think in the early days there's a lot of energy, and that may smooth over some of those rough patches. But then when things get rough, and they always do, we always all bump into things along the way. Those things start to come to the surface. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit. We've talked before, like you and I have known each other a long time, actually. And you're really focused on the importance of building a culture of leadership. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Let's do that in the context of life sciences and bright people. So there's also an evolution that organizations go through, especially startups. There's 3 people get together and they have this idea for a product and they get some funding, and push comes to shove, and now they're in a bullpen. There's 10 of them. They're working in one big office, and there's a board of directors made up of PhDs and physicians and, all these people that know nothing about business, by the way, right? All these people that they've invested in a franchise, or they've been involved in some other products before, but they're not trained operations or people. You start out in a bullpen. There's this 3 people. You got some funding. Goes to 10 people. You're yelling over the cubicle about this new client, this potential client, FDA approval, whatever happens to be going on, and it's very functional. People get stuff done. People are motivated. In their mind they're going to get some big stock option at some point, or there's going to be some big thing that happens, and plus it's exciting work and you're helping people and all that. And then all of a sudden you get, the board starts to form, and then all of a sudden now, you've changed the strategy a little bit. You're going to go into different markets, or you're going to go into a different direction, or you're going to expand the product, whatever you're going to do. And you have some good luck. And now there's 50 people in the organization. So the original 10 people that were in the bullpen are now the vice presidents of this company, right? And it's not the same experience. And they're not necessarily, it's not scalable.
What's different? I don't want to gloss over, just say it's different. Give me some examples of how it's different.
If I'm in charge of the research, let's say, I have control of 2 people that work for me directly. I have a direct line to the CEO. I have direct line to the board. In fact, the board's bothering me and coming in, and we're sharing ideas all the time. There's 50 people now. And now my research group is 15 people, which means I have to run 15 people. And those 15 people are brilliant too. And they have ideas and they have egos, and they're trying to get an A on the paper, right? They're trying to do really well. And then and the board member comes in and whispers in the guy's ear that you're going to go somewhere else, you're going to do something different. He starts doing that, and that's all wrong. So it's like it's not the same as you and I just doing a podcast today. But if we have to set up a company that does podcasts or it's a different kind of thing. The demands are different. The expectations are different. You have problems with people making decisions. They don't know how to make the right decision. They don't know how to make a decision. They don't know how to be accountable, or they're frustrated again because most of these life science companies, lots of good startup companies are filled with really bright people, which they want to exercise their talents and their abilities. And now they have to shift to, dealing with somebody calling sick on Tuesday, or they don't want to work. They want to work from home, or, they're not getting along with Bill in marketing. So these things get kind of the complexities of the social arrangement change so intensely that they don't know how to shift from being a great contributor on a team to actually leading people and leading and working with the team in different ways. And that brings up decision-making problems, trust problems, communication problems, etc.
Let's talk a little bit about working with partners or vendors. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these life science companies, they're regulated to some extent. They have to get approvals, and they have to, quality is critically important, and there's a lot at stake. So the tendency is to be very analytical about most things they do. And I'm talking from my experience now, and it's worked both ways. But I'll get interviewed 3 times with the whole team before they'll have the lawyer draw up a document, and then the document comes back and says like all I'm going to do is sit in the conference room and have conversations with you. Why? We got to go through all this. I got to have my legal look at it. Finally we agreed to do it. I start doing the work, and then I don't get paid for 3 months. And the reason why is because it has to go through legal first. Like this is, and so, it's just a symptom of the inherent complexities of that social arrangement that's going on in the company. Other companies have said, listen, come in, let's meet with the team, send over a contract. They don't even sign it. I've actually started assignments without even talking about what the fee was, right? Come in right away. We come in, we agree to meet once a month. And finally I looked at, this is the fee. Oh yeah. Okay. No problem. See, there's a difference there, right? You have to be, you gotta, regardless of the organization, you have to be agile. And so part of that is the litigious nature of the world we live in. And I'm sure that they've gotten screwed 100 times by other vendors that don't know what they're doing. And I just think, I guess what I'm saying is this indecision, this complexity, this process, this trust problem, this decision-making problem doesn't just affect the organization. It affects the employees. It affects the vendors. And what's that going to do? It's going to turn vendors off. I make decisions now about which company that I work with based on that interaction, right? I can help them. I call it out. But if this is going to be like for relatively, my fees are relatively small compared to what they're producing or what they're getting funded. If they can't make a decision because they're worried that I'm going to sue them for some reason, this is ridiculous, right? So that's just all part of the complexities. Having said that, the companies that do really well in this space are the companies that get over this quickly. And the question is, what do they do to get over this quickly? And that is that they recognize, like this company that called me, and they recognize right away, we're not functioning as a team here. What do we do? And they do the hard work around, it's always amazing to me that I can sit in a room with really rational, very bright people, and they go, oh yeah, why don't we trust each other? It's like you just have to be aware of it. Just like me in the example I gave when I was off site with my doctorate working with that team, right? It's like, I'm a human being that gets stuck in this mode. And as soon as it became aware that there's a problem here and that I'm partly responsible for that, then I can make the change. So companies that invest in that kind of stuff, can do well. Now, a lot of times they might have a board member or a really good CEO that knows how to do this stuff instinctively, or they've got experience and they're really good leaders and they don't need to, they don't need any help. But they're applying this kind of thinking, the awareness, the reduce the drama, really good leadership principles. And so that's important. I actually think it's really important for these firms to hire not just medical experienced people, right? In fact, when I told you the story about Gary Hirschberger, right? He said after I told him the story, he gets up into the microphone. He says, "Russ, I don't know how you got away. Like I should have hired you even without the experience, right? Like what you're giving." So there are lots of people that have great business experiences that might not align directly with the experience of life sciences, but so what? Are they good characters? Can they bring value to your thinking differently about your company? Can they help you scale the organization better? Right? That stuff I think has to be considered, and it's not just these companies that fall in this trap. A lot of companies do.
Yeah, I would agree. I think though, on a couple of notes, I think that companies do tend to want people who've been through this sort of thing before. So this is not their first rodeo. They don't want to pull in people who are figuring it out as they go. Because there is plenty to sort out. And they want those people who get the industry. They get that it's highly regulated, and that's not just a box to check, but it has real implications. And so I think that they're probably predisposed to avoid the pain and avoid the mistakes by bringing those people who are in industry, and to your point, maybe avoid fresh thinking or a fresh perspective on things.
And I'm not saying that people shouldn't be careful. I mean, I want my heart surgeon to have lots of experience being a heart surgeon, right? If I've got to get FDA approval, I'd like somebody that's been through that process before. But do I need that? You know, do I need that for other areas of the operation, especially lower levels of the operation? So I'm just saying that this talent that's out there, and it's not just about the talent, but it's also about just making sure that you're looking at things differently. Now, the board is supposed to provide some of that, but in my experience too with these companies, the board is not very, it's not diverse, especially when they're early stage. It's not as diverse as it could be. I think really good companies make sure they have a diverse board. Certainly, as people can be accomplished, but they don't necessarily have to be in a particular field as long as their domain expertise is valuable.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Let's do this. Let's shift gears a little bit because I'd like to get into some nuts and bolts. You talk about overcoming leadership gaps. So you mentioned that in your bio, 77% of leaders believe there's a leadership gap. What does that mean, and what are some ways that you've helped some companies address that gap?
The firm, Sojourn Partners, and me and my associates, that's what we do. We help people prepare for that. So we do that in a number of ways. But why is leadership so critical today? Why are CEOs worried about that? Because I don't know if it's again the sociology going on here. People want to be self-actualized. One time, self-actualized means reaching the peak of your purpose, right? Sometimes today, a lot of people lean on self-actualization as being, I only work part-time and I work on my garden, and this is awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think people today can make choices that maybe my generation couldn't make. I mean, I needed to work. I wanted to get ahead. I wanted to do really well. I was passionate about my work, so I dug into that. Where my son today might make choices that are different because he can make those choices. So I think what's going on, and I think fundamentally, people, really good people, are almost afraid to lead because they have to be accountable. There's risk in it to some extent, perceived risk in it, and they think they don't have the skills to be able to do that. And I'm telling you, yes, there is risk in it, right? but most professional people I know, and if I can get them in a room and talk to them for 10 minutes, I realize pretty quickly that they understand these fundamental relationship skills. They know how to get along in the world. They know how to talk to people. They just have to practice the muscle of learning how to do that. Like, they know how to do it, but practice actually doing it, right? And once they do it, once they, you know, do it, they come back and they say, "Oh my God, that wasn't as hard as I thought it was. I talked to the team. I told them that we had a problem. Yeah, right." And what was the reaction? They appreciated me being honest. Awesome. Like, just be a good person. Like, really, do you have these skills? As far as the complexity of it, it is scary because it's the unknown, right? So, I can tell you one story. I know this young marketing guy. He does a lot of videos and things like that. And I remember met him. I was talking to him and I said, "Well, you need to hire some people. You need to hire." He's listen. I'm never going to hire anybody, right? And I'm like, "That's all right. That's sometime you're going to figure out you want the money, and sometimes your family's going to put pressure on you. You're going to want to buy a house. There's things that are going to happen to you, and you'll figure it out." And today, that's what he does. That's what's going on, right? Like, you kind of evolve into that. But people in corporations aren't stepping up to these big roles. It's very scary. And I've seen executive assistants become president of an aircraft company. Now, how can that happen? Because she had mentoring, she had people that believed in her, they pushed her, they put her in situations that were difficult. That's how you teach leadership. You actually show people, look, that wasn't so hard, right? And I can just give you one story on that. I was in finance, and we were making products for the U.S. government, and we had to go every month and give presentations to the president of the company, and explain to him what we were selling the product for and what the margins were, and we had to explain, like, this was a good value, and this is our approach to selling it. And all the bosses were out, and the meeting came up, and they said, "Russ, you go take the meeting." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like, you want me to walk?" And I'm 30 years old. I'm like, "You want me to walk in the room with these presidents and senior vice presidents and these smart engineers and these smart people, and you want me? I'm going to screw this up." So I go, and so I was in front of Bill Swanson, who happened to be the president of Raytheon, and I go and give the presentation, and I'm a nervous wreck, right? And I get through it. I give him all the numbers, and he looks at me and he goes, "That's great. I'll sign that." He said, "That wasn't so hard, was it?" Now, what was he doing? He's mentoring me. He's like, that's what leaders do, right? This young person comes in, he's giving a big presentation. It means a lot to him. Like, it's like, that's what it is. And that inspired me that, wow, I can really do this. And so this is what we have to do. We have to put people in positions. We have to stretch them. We have to, make them work. Don't beat them to death with administration. I'm not saying you throw them in there and you beat them up and you make them fail, but I mean, mitigate the risk and put them in a situation where they can come out and then, how did that feel? It felt great, right?
Yeah, I think that's awesome. You talk a lot about the leadership gap. In fact, 77% of leaders believe that there is a leadership gap. What is a leadership gap? What does that even mean?
It means that people are not prepared or willing to to succeed in the organization and step into senior roles. They would rather be, there seems to be a trend for people to want to be sole contributors and get an A on the paper and not have to deal with all this messy social stuff.
So you have junior or mid-level people who just aren't, they're just not interested in climbing the ladder and becoming management and leading teams.
I think if they're really being honest with themselves, that certainly would like to do that, but I think there's a certain fear involved, right? And that fear has to do with there's several components of that. One is they don't feel psychologically safe. They've worked for people before that yelled at them if they did something wrong, or if they took a risk, or they colored outside the lines, right? There's a little, or they're disrespected in meetings, or so. Um, Not always. Some people just are hesitant. They'll say to me, I'm an introvert," which is all self-talk. Lots of introverts become great leaders, and it's just putting yourself out there. So there's a little bit of psychological safety that has to. There's a need People feel as though they need so much information to be able to be qualified, because that's what we talked about a little. If I don't have experience in marketing, I have a marketing degree, but I don't have experience in marketing. I've been working in finance for 10 years, and Gary Hirschberger says, yeah, thank you, but you don't have the experience, right? And maybe it would have been a cool thing. I could have done it. Most people wouldn't even make that call. I have no business calling anybody about a marketing job because I don't have that experience. So where do I start? So they don't have the sense that they know the domain enough, and they get caught up in the ambiguity of it all, and they can't necessarily like take that leap or lean into something that's new for fear that they're going to not be qualified and feel dumb, or whatever that is. Um, and the other thing is there is a the thing about, I think, people that are successful. There's a certain humility that they have. They don't have to have all the answers. They can get it wrong, and they can recover from them. It doesn't hurt their egos, right? The people that I see be the most successful don't pretend to know stuff in a meeting, or pretend, or posture them, put themselves out as something they're not. They'll say, I don't know that, but I'll get back to you. And everybody says, that's great. No one says, well, what do you mean? You don't know what you're talking about? No one does that, right? It's like there's a humility. You're not going to get it right every time. Just enjoy it. Like, enjoy the journey. If I have to give someone feedback, this is the social part, right? There's a fear of, I'm going to have to deal with, you know, John in accounting's bad behavior, and I got to give him feedback, and he might yell at me, right? It's Once you learn how to do that, it's Bill in accounting is going to say, thanks for telling me. He's not going to yell at you, right? But they have to kind of learn that. So if you're going to, the gap is basically what I'm defining for you is a lack of confidence in people that they can actually do the job. I believe, I personally believe that leadership is a little harder. It's emotionally harder. It's socially harder, but it's 100 times more rewarding than getting the A in the paper, right? It's just the juice that make people become leaders and really, want to have a legacy and want to have an impact. And so what we do is, in coaching and in the training programs we do, is we help people find that for themselves, and we build their confidence. I say before every executive team meeting, before any training program, before any coaching client, I say to them, my job is to build your confidence. I'm going to help you build your confidence. And I can't even build it. I can help you build your confidence. Because once you have confidence, right, and you can think on your feet, and you can be humble, and you can feel psychologically safe, right, and you can have trust in what you know. You might not know what everybody knows, but you know what you know. You're free. I mean, it's just a better way to live. So the gap exists because of fear, and I think companies are really investing heavily, and and they hire us to come in and work with those, that senior director or that vice president that's heir apparent. We go in, we help them, we get that, and we basically say to them, "See, it's not that hard. Let me show you. Let's go. It's not that hard. You can do it. You have support. Let's go do it." So
I think it's like a lot of things where, it's the fear of the unknown. You just don't know what you're doing. You don't want to fail. You don't want to look bad. I think with a lot of these companies, in dealing with some really smart people, there are people in the room who expect everyone to be the expert and to have the answers. And, it's not everybody, but I can remember a few years ago, we were working with the team and everything was running smoothly. And then they brought in an engineer, and somebody on our team didn't have the answer. And he got very, very upset because that person didn't have that one particular process or data point. I can't remember exactly what it was, but that person didn't have the answer. And they said, I'm sorry, I don't know that. I can go look that up for you. And that person at that point, that particular engineer, we lost their confidence. And I think it's really hard. We work sort of in partnership with that. I think it's really hard for people who are in that environment to work with someone like that,
yeah,
who can't accept that, well, maybe you don't have the answer right now. And maybe coupled with that, these might be related or not. Some people just really don't know how to work with other people. They have poor behaviors. They have bad attitudes. So those are, I don't know. I don't know if those are the same two sides of a different coin.
Yeah, those are so those. Yeah, there are two different sides. So the assumption is that when I'm going into an engagement with an executive team or high potential or whatever, the I you know I my assumption is these are all healthy, capable, resourceful people that. And I find, by the way, that the higher in the organization you go, and actually the more education or the more experience people have, the more they're open to this. So, but having said that, yeah, there are passive aggressive people that think this is all BS and they don't want to deal with it, and I can just and that's a different problem. So I'm not an advocate that says, when I went into this business, I thought I'm going to change everybody. I'm going to make everybody happy. But the fact is, you can't. There's some people that are just not there yet. They still need to go on their journey before they're capable of doing that. And then there's also there are people that have been there a long time that don't have checked out as far as I'll tell you a funny story. So I got called by this. It was an engineering company. It was a technical engineering company, and I was brought in to work with this guy who was a senior. I don't know. He's vice president of engineering, right? And I'm coaching him because he needs a coach, right? Okay, well, so I go to the first meeting with this guy, and I'm sitting there talking about I ask him questions, and he's just totally posturing, like, oh my God, I've been an executive for so long. I'm a man. I'm such a good manager. I could actually, I'm interested in doing what you do, Russ. I'm like, oh, okay. I said, well, then let's just end it then. I said, it was nice to meet you. He goes, well, wait a minute. I said, well, you know it already. You finished. You just said you've got it figured out. So, I mean, this is over a period of time, but basically, I'm calling him out on his BS, right? And he's like, "Wait a minute, okay, all right. Let me come." Like he caught himself. I made him aware of what he was doing, and then we kind of progressed. But the truth is that that might not ever go anywhere. I mean, people have to be willing to change, and if they're not willing to change, or they're not willing to embrace, or they're not willing to work in the modern organization, which is what we're talking about, they won't last long. And by the way, I actually think that if there are people in your organization that are caustic, passive aggressive, ruining the culture, 100% of the time, if they once they're gone, you don't want to let them go because they're good at sales or they're good at whatever they do. 100% of the time, when they go, you're relieved, and you fill it, and you change, and it fills up better. So
Well,
even
what
though
about the
we want to help
argument?
people,
What about the argument though that, because I hear this so many times though, we can't replace that person. That person's irreplaceable. In clinical or in an engineer. In a scientific setting. People really believe that there isn't anyone else out there that can do that job.
yeah, it's not. It, in my experience, yes, it's regrettable. Yes, they're talented, but they're leaving a wake behind them wherever they go. And you think you're improving the team. You think you're setting a bad example. You're ruining the culture. It's not good. You know, yes, you'll take you know, and I have 100 stories like this. You'll take somebody and you leave them there for too long, and then you end up calling me to come in. And I'll tell you what happens. All coaching does is accelerate what's going to happen naturally. So in other words, the example I can give you is if I wanted to be an NFL kicker, right? Can you imagine me an NFL kicker, right? Well, I could
Yeah.
do it if I practiced for 3 lifetimes. It would happen eventually, right? If I was born and I had I trained and maybe the first lifetime I didn't do it, but the second life, like if with enough training and practice, you probably can do just about anything.
Let's talk a little bit about practical things companies can do to make sure they are getting their companies off on the right foot. I'm trying to build. I'm in the early stages. I'm focused on the science. I'm focused on the technology, and I'm putting this team together. And I've got a long view. I have an idea for my exit. I've figured out some of my investing pieces. I'm doing all the research, and I realize that I want to build my leadership team today at the outset rather than just get the science up and running or the tech up and running, and then I'll figure out the leadership team. What might I do in the early stages to build that culture of leadership and set that expectation? Maybe from day one.
Yeah. So I think definitely it's if you're going to put a team together um, to do something, you know, we'd love to get the best people in the world to do it. And goes back to my premise that just, if the person's not perfect, do they have the right character? Do they have the right energy? Are their motivations right? Are they easy to work with? Are they malleable? Can they grow? Right. So that's what you end up doing. And there's going to be turnover in that because people are going to say, well, I didn't sign up for this, or this is too complicated. And you're going to call out quickly as possible. But I think that you do make an expectation, and a lot of these companies do. A lot of the people that found them end up playing some kind of critical leadership role, and they have to evolve. My premise is, if they don't evolve and they stay there, it's like having one arm tied behind your back, and it's going to create all kinds of challenges. So I think you're going to be open to, and I think it's really important. Like I had one guy always say, I always want to hire people smarter than me. I want my people to be smarter than me, right? And and let's nurture each other, and and go to trainings and put people in difficult situations. So I think that's what you do. I also believe that there's a time for a leader. There's a time for a certain leader. So, um, companies doing really well, they need to shake up human resources or some function, finance or whatever they have to shake up because it's not doing well or they're having problems, and they bring in uh, there are different kinds of executives. There's a person that can stabilize the organization. There's the person that can create change. There's a person that can be innovative, right? You find as you evolve, you also bring in different people. So it's not unusual for someone to be, let's say, a change agent. They might have a reputation for that. They've worked at this company, they've worked at this company, and they've created change, and they built this and built that. They come into the new company and they do really well for 2 years, and then they don't know how to stop changing things. Like they don't know how to shift into, it's time to stabilize. So it's not, and that's why you see when you see executives leaving companies and different CEOs being hired. It's time for a change because you might need a different approach to things. And like my tendency, your tendency, Bill, is you're an innovative guy. You really love new technology. You're well read on all that stuff. You're an innovator. To ask you to kind of go run a hospital
Yeah.
or some administrative job, and it would
No,
kill
thank
you.
you.
Like run for Congress. Are you kidding me? Like, I mean, I couldn't do it, right?
No.
Because so I think different situations, different evolutions require different kind of people. And I think that's healthy, right?
Ha-
So.
I think that's great. So let's touch on a couple quick things here. This has been great, and we'll kind of tighten this up a bit. But give me kind of three quick tips, if you will, for somebody who's building a new company like a life science company, med tech. What are three quick things that recommendations you could give them to kind of get their team off on the right foot?
So that's a big ask, right? Every situation is going to be different. So to narrow down to three things, like people will say to me, right, Russ, what are the 10 leadership tips? There's lots of books that show that. But what I'm saying to you is every situation requires a different formula in chemistry. Having said that, I really do believe that um, the best organizations, there's a certain care. There's a care for the product. There's a care for what they're doing. There's some kind of passion around what's going on. If you can't link that, and by the way, you can always link it. You can always do it. I don't care if you. I had a guy that ran a manufacturing firm, and he made parts for like went into heart pumps or something, right? And he leveraged that with his company. People were proud of the work that they did, even though they just did that. I think that also. I think that there's like um, um, you've heard me maybe talk about agency. I think you have to instill in your team members a sense of agency. And agency is basically it's the it's It's if I want you to have agency, Bill, I'm going to help you be self-actualized and through your own determination. So that means I'm going to help you be self-actualized. Now, I can't help you with your life and your family and I can't, but I can definitely professionally, I can, Bill, you come to me and you say, Russ, I'd really love to get into research. You know what, Bill, let's stick this out through the end of the year. And I'm on a board with another person that you, I'll make an introduction. Now that sounds counterintuitive. Like, why would you do that? But just because I said that to you is going to make you want to stay working for me. Like it's right. But it's like I want to help you reach your goals. And by the way, I've seen people that worked in, um, they worked in, they were working with patients and they just didn't have the tolerance for patients and they were going to fire this person. And what they ended up doing is they renegotiated with that person and put them in human resources and they thrived. Right? It's like, but she doesn't have experience in human resources. Doesn't what does it matter? She's really good. We like her. We don't want to let her go because she's not doing well in this other. Like so, I'm going to help her be self-actualized. That requires mentoring, coaching, spending time with them, really paying attention to that person, really caring about the other person. So that's important. And again, part of agency is I want people to feel confident. You know. So that wasn't so hard, was it? You know what? I want you to give this presentation. I want you to fly out and do this thing. You can do it. Don't worry about it. I'll fly in the second day. And like put them in these situations. They're going to feel so much better. You're creating a culture of accountability. You're creating a culture of connection, of growth, right? Human beings, as much as like we like to think, you know, um, we want our life to be easy. People want to be stimulated. And if the worst thing you can do is have them be bored in their job or pushing paper around for no reason, stimulate them by having them do different things. And that's the way you're going to broaden out the experience of people. There used to be that, I mean, it is still today, like we want deep knowledge in a particular field. The best leaders don't even come. I'm telling you, my experience is a lot of CEOs that we work with had some experience in sales and marketing. Now so an engineer. This person's an electrical engineer. He goes to work for a company, works in engineering for a while, and then he takes a stint in sales. What's he learning in sales? He's learning about the customers. He's learning about the products. Like he's learning this whole other thing. He's learning how to deal with people, right? So today, it's more important that people have vast experience in different things, different experiences that they can leverage and bring. So again, as I said earlier, I think that most technical companies um, need to, we need to put our biases away. We have these biases. Oh, they're too young. I can't hire them. They're going to be a problem. Or I don't like the way Bill dresses. He doesn't look professional.
So, Rice, you talk about trust. You talk about fostering trust. And as we go from 10 to 50, I think as you add more people in there, you get less time together. The dynamics change. There are different motivators. What are some things that a leader can do to continue or reinforce or keep building trust in their organization?
They can do that by trusting. And let me just explain. There are two kinds of trust. There's earned trust and there's gifted trust, right? Most of us, we kind of go by this thing. I'll trust you once I trust you. I don't trust you yet. That's kind of like the way we operate, right? But we have to give trust to people, and when they fail at that, then we can address it. We don't address it by not trusting them. We address it by fixing it, like how and giving them the benefit of the doubt and helping them figure it out. So what the leader could do is he's got to give that trust. Now, I'm not saying take your eye off the ball. I'm not saying that you're not going to pay attention to the numbers or you're not going to pay attention. You're not going to ask questions where appropriate. But, if you ever feel not trusted, like how do you feel? You're scared. You don't operate the same way. You don't take any chances. You're gonna do kind of crazy things.
Well, it impacts how you feel about that person. I'll tell you that at one point in my career, I had a CEO that said to the company, we'll never let anyone work from home, because if you let people work from home, even though technologically we're fully capable of it, I'll never let people work from home because they won't work.
Well, that's just like, I mean,
It's, and he explicitly said that directly to us as a team, and I remember thinking, wow, you just don't trust us at all.
right. Like, and what'd you do? How long did you stay there? Like, it's like if you're not feeling trusted, you're just gonna fall apart, and you're not gonna feel psychologically safe. Now, having said that, if I trust you to do something, Bill, right, and you don't do it, I can't. I need to make you accountable to that, and that doesn't mean dock your pay or yell at you. It means, hey, Bill, what's going on here? We said we were going to do this. Where do we fall apart? What can we do differently? Right. And I think, and again, if these are bad actors that can't do that, that's a different problem. Now you got a different problem. But for the most part, most people want to be trusted and they want to do well. They want. It's like you have to teach them that accountability is not a bad thing, and that they can. There's a margin here for risk and for errors and for creativity and for, there's a margin here to work with. So the best thing the best thing. So just one quick story. Executive, very senior. She became president of, I won't say the company, big company, like international company, president of a division, not the whole company, but a president of a division. And she hired me because she wanted to. She got promoted from sales to the presidency, right? And I had a meeting with her, and she was great. She was smart. She was like, she was engaging. She was really self-aware. She really wanted to learn this stuff. And she says, Russ, what do I do so that I know what everybody in the company's doing at all times? And and I kind of chuckle. I'm like that's impossible. You're going to have to trust people. I said, what do you think? She couldn't get there. I said, what about trust? And she goes, I mean, as silly as that sounds, she was so used to controlling everything, which is why she got promoted, right? She knew where everything was. She was up to date on everything. She could give great presentations because she had all kinds of information. But you can't do that anymore. Now you have to trust people, and the more you trust people, the more they're going to be accountable to that. It's like the silly thing when some garments they get signed by the person that inspected them, right? They're
Mhm.
putting their name on they're signing their name to that product, which means they're accountable to that, right? And that there's a certain trust related to that. Once people are signing their work, so to speak, or being accountable for it, because they're trusted, it kind of spreads. It becomes part of the culture, and that what your story it was part of the culture that. Um, I mean, if he said, "I don't want people working from home because it's not good for the business, or we're not close to the customer, or whatever the reason is," okay. But because people aren't going to work, I mean, that's such a generalization. I mean, it's true. Some people won't be able to work,
Mhm.
and then if they're not accountable to working from home, then they can't work from home. But yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question. I know it's a simple answer, but um, how you do that is you let people do stuff. You reward them when they take risks. You there's a company we work with, a big national engineering firm that builds like skyscrapers and stuff, and we worked with all of their market leaders. These are the people that run the markets, the different cities and stuff. And they had a process where if something gets screwed up, if there was a mistake made in the field that lost money or was whatever, they would have a monthly meeting, and the people that made the mistake would share the mistake with everybody else. And they weren't, I mean, they don't want that to happen, obviously. You don't want to make a mistake. But, we were late because of this and this happened. We need to do, this is what we're doing. And what you're doing is you're teaching the organization it's okay, but you're going to be accountable to that mistake, and it was done in a way that people, they didn't want it to happen, but they learned a ton from that. And that's an example of infusing. They weren't going to send people down to check on them the next time. Or these are people running a market. They're pretty good people.
I think you make a good point, and I sort of to sum it up. Um, I think that there could certainly be an effort to extend trust first, and I think, what did you call it?
Gifted
Gifting,
trust.
gifted
Yeah.
trust,
Yeah.
and starting from there and trusting that, this person kind of gets it, and they're going to work their best to execute on whatever that is. And then when they demonstrate that they can't or won't, um, rather than go to a punishment, or almost like a bad parent, I'm going to punish the whole organization because of one, two, five people. um,
Right.
Make that person accountable, and take a minute, and you talk about accountability as in, okay, we're all going to get together and we're going to review the problem, we're going to review where it fell apart. And it doesn't sound like that's about shining the spotlight on the person, right? It's not about saying, look at this terrible person and what they did. It's about examining the organization, the problem, the processes that led up to that.
And you're also accepting humility, right? Like, again, this is you know, it's like we're so driven by our egos and our fears, and it's like, I mean, the longer I'm in my career, the older I get, the less I care that you know, I'm going to make mistakes. Like I'm going to make mistakes, and but I can learn from them really quickly, and I can really recover from them quickly. And if someone is going to not like me because I made a mistake, right? Well then, fine. That's like, you don't trust me anymore. That's fine. That's not going to happen. It doesn't happen too often. Here's an example. I gave a presentation to a team a couple weeks ago, and I'm really a pretty good facilitator. I'm not as good as some of my other team members, but I'm a pretty good facilitator, and we like to do real stuff in these meetings. So we started talking with this person, and we started having this, so there's a group of 20 people there, and this one person's stuck, and they're kind of airing their grievances, and they're getting all wrapped around. And I'm thinking, you know what? Okay, this is an opportunity to teach. So I'm taking this moment to kind of dig into this problem with her, and it doesn't go well. And after 3 minutes, I realized this person is like, there's another problem going. There's something else going on with this person. They weren't able to access the energy or the mindset to be able to go and fix this problem. So, anyways, we ended the thing. The rest of the day went fine, and the client, who I consider a partner, calls me and says, "Hey, Russ, listen, we got some concerns about what happened with this one person, and I think a less leader person would say, well, wait a minute, we did this, and I did it for this reason, I did it for that reason." Um, yeah, did it for this reason, I did it for that reason. But what I said instead was, you know what? I noticed it too. We're going to put a plan in place to mitigate that going forward. It's going to, I've got total humility. And the answer is like, awesome, Russ. I love working with you guys. I love working with you. Like, that's what people want, right? Like, but I can do this because I have a sense of agency. Again, now we're not born with that necessarily, or it gets taken out of us through growing up. But what we're doing as leaders is creating that sense of agency in people so that they can be accountable, right? Humility is one of the most important leadership traits. Now, it doesn't mean you screw up again. I'm not saying you're going to make a mistake. You're going to make big mistakes that cost the company lots of money. If that happens, you got to recover from it quickly. Or you have to figure it out and not let it happen again. But the person that says, "I'm perfect, I'm never going to make a mistake," is the person that you don't want on your team.
I love that. That's a perfect example. Ross, great talk. So if you're a life science leader or product manager and you have an interesting story you'd like to share, reach out to me on LinkedIn and we'll connect. If you're interested in learning some other lessons in marketing for life sciences or in avoiding some of the big mistakes, I cover a lot of that in my LinkedIn newsletter. So I'll drop the links to those in the description below. That's it. That's the end.